Ernest Holmes talked about permanent happiness could only come from an inner sense of certainty that cannot be shaken. Inner sense of certainty that cannot be shaken. When we focus on our inner vision, on this indwelling harmony, as we contemplate its perfection, we'll see it manifest in everything we do and find ourselves renewed by the divine life, led by divine intelligence, guided by divine love. Also wrote that this change of consciousness does not come by simply willing or wishing. We have to hold our mental attention to an idea. Knowing the truth is not a process of self-hypnosis, but one of gradual unfoldment. Right? Sounds easy, right? And I just realized that all this fell out of order when it fell on the ground. Isn't that great? So I'm going to juggle my talk. So how do we get to the inner sense of peace and tranquility? It starts by paying attention. We find ourselves lost in thought. Anybody do that? Anybody's mind wandering now? Working on your grocery list? Right? Okay, so be with me. Receive a breath, big breath. Biggest breath you've taken all day. Let it go. Feel your body. Notice how quickly you stopped breathing again. So breathe again, big breath. Drop into your body. When we start paying attention to what we're thinking, to what we're saying, to what's driving us, when we start living from this place of desire as opposed to reacting to our circumstances, we start living our life by intent as opposed to by default. How many times do we find ourselves just reacting to what's going on in our circumstance? Right? How many of us have something that we really desire? Anybody? Have that dream life, what you'd love to be doing? How much time do we spend focused on that dream life? Or are we spending our time figuring out why it won't happen, what's in the way of it, what I need to do today, checking emails, doing the busy work, right? Just going through the motions of our daily lives, watching CNN, constantly negative news, right? Keeping up with Game of Thrones and Dancing with the Stars and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and there's also Snapchat now, and there's all these other things that just keep us distracted from what we really want. So how often do we just stop and pay attention? We learned this lesson in kindergarten. Remember that lesson before you cross the street? Stop, look, listen. How often do we do that in our daily lives? How often do we just stop, look, and listen to all that chatter that's going on and realize? Now, I imagine I'm not the only one that's found himself wandering in thought and suddenly going, what the hell am I thinking? What was that about? We have those conversations in our head with people that aren't there. Yeah? Right? You ever notice it's the same conversation that happens over and over again? And we're right. Definitely right. Right? So, how often do we just stop? How often do we focus? I'm sure many of you sit and meditate, right? Anybody here have a meditation practice? Is it as loud as mine? Is it anything but that emptying of the mind? It's all that chatter. It's all that goes on. I'm good at sitting quietly. I can do that. I can sit quietly. Out there it looks quiet. In here it's a lot of chatter. If we take that practice of meditation and we turn it into a focus, then we start training our mind to focus on anything we want to focus on. So you can simply look at your thumb and just think thumb, thumb, Thumb. See if you can do that. See if you can just focus your thought on one thing. Thumb. Oh, wow, I should have, and I need to, oh wait, no, back to thumb, 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 thumb. I have to remember to stop on the way home and get that, oh no, wait, thumb, thumb. See how quickly your mind wanders when you try to focus on one thing, but that is the exercise of staying focused. We all talk about this connection to the mind of God and this wanting to connect to the mind of God, and we all have access to it. Right? We all have access to that one knowing intelligence that we speak of, that voice of God that speaks to us. We know it as our intuition. Yet how often do we do it in spite of knowing better, whatever it might be? I knew I should have, but how often do we do that? In that we ignore that intuition, in that we doubt ourselves. Even when we know better, we doubt ourselves. How many have been in that relationship where you knew better, but you did it anyway? Right? How'd that turn out? How many times along the way did we think, I knew better? But we doubt ourselves. We doubt our own knowing. We doubt our own intelligence. We doubt our own intuition. We doubt our own connection to this thing that we call God, spirit, life. We speak of it being everything, yet we doubt ourselves. How do we get there? Anybody know this? How we get to doubting ourselves so much? You know that the average child hears no 9 times out of 10. 90% of the time, as children, we're being told, no, you're wrong, don't do it like that, do it like this, sit still, don't run around, be quiet, do as you're told. We are born learning at the genius level. Think about it. The learning trajectory in those first 2 years is like a rocket. We go from this blob, barely able to hold our heads up, to, oh, I'm doing that. That's connected, and I could do it with my toes too, and now you're crawling, and then you're walking, and then you're speaking. The trajectory in those first 2 years is straight up. We're learning at the genius level. By the time we're 5, only 20% of us are still learning at the genius level. And by the time we're 20, 2%. Do you know why? Anyone? Bueller? No one? We learn self-doubt. We learn self-criticism. We learn because we're told 90% of the time that we are wrong. So we begin to doubt our own intelligence. We're taught to conform. We're taught to shut down that inner guidance, that connection that we were born with, to knowing everything, that connection to what we call God, to life. And so much knowing, so much talent, but if it's not what society or our parents or our teachers think is the right thing for us, we get redirected to the proper choices. We get taught to fit into that mold. So now that we're all grown up, our work isn't really to learn anything. Our work is to forget what we were taught, and to reconnect to our own inner knowing. Is this making sense to anyone? Yeah? Good. To connect to our spirit, to our genius, to go back to that awareness that we were born with, that I can do this, and I can do anything. I believe that in this experience, in this human experience that we're in, we all know everything there is to know. We speak of there is only one mind. It is the mind of God. We speak of there's only one life. It is God's life. It is my life now. So we know that all that information is there. It's just a matter of tuning in and accessing it. So what there is not to learn, but to remember. We remember who we are. If we remember that we are simply that vessel, that channel for this life to express, then all there is to tune into it. And that where we have power is in creating our own reality. Right? So none of this is new information. Troward, Napoleon Hill, Ernest Holmes, Jesus, Buddha, they've all said the same thing. They've all been teaching us the same thing, that we're all connected, that we all are this presence that is life. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one that's had the experience before of feeling when we're aligned with it, when we're in tune with it. Have you ever had that feeling like, wow, I don't even know how I did that, but it just flowed? Anybody had that experience where you get to the other side of something and you look back and go, wow, that was pretty amazing, I did that. Whether it's landing a job that you had doubts about, or it's avoiding that accident where you suddenly see the car swerve and you go whoosh, whoosh, and you go around it and you get to the other side and go, wow, right? So we've all had these experiences, and I think that's when we're completely tuned in and we're really aligning with that presence. So I wasn't raised in religion. I never had any formal teaching. I mean, the extent of my religion was a few holidays and a bar mitzvah. But I was never trained in any formal religion. But I always had this feeling, and even before I was introduced to the Science of Mind teachings, if someone would ask, do you believe in God? My response would be, I am God. Does that bother you? Did the voice in your head say, who does he think he is, saying such a thing? Obviously, he thinks he's God, right? The other half of that statement is, and so are you. We speak of God is everything. There's only one life, God's life, my life. So if we believe God is everything, then clearly we're all part of this everything that we speak of. So I am God, and so are you. Say it with me. Say, I am God.
I am God.
How's that feel? Do you suddenly go, ooh, scary? Right? Now turn to your neighbor, look him in the eye, and say, I am God, and so are you. How'd that feel? Right? Can you see the God presence in the people sitting around you? Can you see their genius? Can you see their magnificence? Have you had those moments that I've had that just bring you to tears when you see that beauty in somebody? That it just, rocks you to the core. So why can we do that so easily with someone else, yet we shut it down in ourselves? You can be magnificent, you can be beautiful, you can be talented, you can be creative, but me? Couldn't possibly. Why do we do that? Why do we shut ourselves down like that? We speak of God like it's, and I say it because, we speak of God like it's something separate. We talk about that it's everything, yet we strive to connect to it. We strive to feel it. We strive to hear the voice of God. We strive to reconnect to it. But if it is everything, how could we not be connected to it? Trying to be more connected to God is like trying to be more connected to your belly button. It's there. It's always connected. But we feel separate from it. But I bet you're more aware of your belly button now than you were 5 minutes ago. Right? And why is that? Simply because we're talking about it. And that's where designing our life, designing our world comes into play. It's about that awareness, right? So touch your belly button. And say it again. I'm God. I'm connected to God. Just like my belly button. You're never going to think of your belly button the same again. If you ever wonder where God is, it's in your belly button. Alanis Morissette has that song, I imagine everyone's familiar with it. It says, "What if God was one of us?" Right? Everybody familiar with that song? What if God was one of us? Right? Just a stranger on the bus. I think we're all God and trying to find our way home. So how do we find our way home? Anyone? Ernest Holmes said, "Man's word spoken forth into creative mind is endowed with the power of expression." So when we become aware of what we think and believe, and part of that is asking ourselves, what do I believe? And do I really believe this, or is this what somebody taught me or told me to believe? Right? Socrates said, "Know thyself." So in that, it is about that inward contemplation of checking our thoughts, checking ourselves. What do I believe? Did I learn this? Or is this an awareness that is in me? Do I believe this or not? And when we become aware of that, we start to see what's driving us. We start to see what motivates us. And we start to see if we're living by default or by intention. How often do we stop and really check our thoughts? How often do we stop and say no to those thoughts? This is what I really want. When we can hold a vision of what we really want in the face of circumstances that would tell us different, no, that can't be. When we can hold our vision beyond that, that's when we make those huge strides. I have a really good friend who's been a real estate agent for like 30 years. In 2008, when the real estate market came to a screeching halt, and most real estate agents were either finding new careers or driving for Uber and crying about how bad the real estate market was and how their income had disappeared and worrying about what they were going to do, my friend Jeff kept saying, "It's not my reality. And every time somebody cried to him about how bad business was, he said, "Not my reality." In that year, he had his best year ever financially in real estate. He not only had his best year ever after being an agent for about 25 years, he tripled his best prior to that. Simply by saying, "Not my reality," not buying into circumstance. He held his ground. So, can we do that? Can we manage that? Can we manage to stay in our strength, in our being? Right? They say that God sees your attention as your intention. So where are you focusing your attention? And is that really what your intention is? If we're focused on reacting to whatever's being thrown at us, then that is our intention, and that is what we're going to continue to see. If we can focus our attention more on that dream life, on that reality that we choose to create, then that is what shows up. What do you find yourself seeing or saying, either to yourself or to others, most often? Is it, "I'm tired, I'm broke, I can't"? Or is it, and we're going to do this together. Let's do this together. Repeat after me. "I'm strong. I'm smart. I'm loved. I'm powerful. I am," and say your name. "Aware of my magnificence. I'm grateful. And I'm blessed." Most of us don't even realize how not present we are. We live in the distractions, worrying about the past, or worrying about what's to come, dwelling on the past. But if we stop in a moment, and again receive a breath, that brings us present. We can check in on our thoughts. We can see, is this really where I'm headed? Is this really where I want to be headed? And if we notice the thoughts without judgments and just let them blow by like clouds, we can move on to what we truly want. The key here is to notice. It's to become aware of our thoughts, be aware of our words. What are we saying? And again, when we don't manage our thoughts and words, we end up with a life by default instead of by design. So, in the words of Wayne Dyer, don't believe what you see what you believe. And he actually said, you'll see it when you believe it. Our perspective is everything. If we focus and keep diligent, then what we truly desire is what's going to manifest for us. When we change our focus, we change our reality. So, do a quick check-in. What have you been believing? And how's that working out for you? Your outer world is a reflection of our inner world. So, even now, how loud have those voices in your head been? Have you been listening to me or to them? How much of what's been said actually got in? If you're anything like me, it's a constant argument up in there. I call them the committee. Are those voices in your head kind and loving? Are they aligned with what you really want? What would it take for us to create a knowing within ourselves so strong that no outside circumstance could change our mind? What would that look like? I read this quote recently that said, "An unexamined life is one where we rarely stop to reflect on what we truly want in life, on who we are and how we're moving through the world, or on what's really right for us. Without developing an inner life, we can become sleepwalkers, living on autopilot according to values that are not our own." So your homework, should you choose to accept it, is to notice. What are you thinking? What are you saying? What are you looking for? I've always said you're always going to find what you're looking for. If you're looking for what's wrong, you'll find it. We can go back to relationships. If you're in a relationship and you're seeing everything that's wrong with that relationship, you're going to find it. If you look for what's right, you're going to find it. So what have you been looking for? So your homework is to notice what you've been looking for. Notice what you say, what you think, and then ask yourself, does this thought or this statement empower me? And if the answer is no, then simply stop and say, delete. I delete that, take all power away from it. What I meant to say was, and replace it with something that is empowering. And if we make a habit of doing this and catching ourselves, and it takes diligence, and it takes focus, and it takes practice, because those old paradigms, those old patterns, they will hook, and they will morph. Just when you think you've figured it out, it shows up as something else. So it takes diligence. It takes being hyper-vigilant and aware and continually checking ourselves and remembering that we are the creators of our own reality. We get to create our own heaven or our own hell. That's where we have power. We're all connected. We all have that access to what we call the one mind, the mind of God, that presence. Now, I totally get sometimes things happen, right? I've heard this before. I didn't create this illness. Did I really create this illness? Did I really create this traffic accident? Whatever it might be. Sometimes things just happen. Where we have choice is in how we respond to them. We've all connected the dots backwards on things that at the time we thought were horrible. But looking back, now it makes sense, because that brought me to here. So, how we respond to it is where we have our power. We get to live life by design or by default. We get to design our heaven or our hell. Because you are God. And so am I. Own it. Live it. And it starts by knowing ourselves. It starts by digging in, by being aware, and by being present. Notice that you're not breathing. So receive a breath. And when you do that, when you receive a breath, when you're aware of that air entering, your body expanding, that brings you present to the moment. Anytime you find yourself lost in the thoughts, in the distractions, stop, receive a breath. And I say receive on purpose. There's nothing to take. And if you doubt me, exhale completely. Exhale completely. Let all the air out and try not to receive a breath. See what happens. So touch your belly button and say, Oh, come on. With feeling. There was so much doubt in the room. One more time. Touch your belly button and say it. I love God. And so are you. Thank you. So, do you want me to take it into a prayer? You sure? You want to? You want to? It's all coming from the same place, so it doesn't matter who says it. So again, receive a breath and just fall into your body. Feel into your body. Become aware of this moment, this presence. And in this moment, knowing that there truly is just that one presence that is all life, this thing we call God, Spirit, universal life force, whatever name, whatever label our human mind wants to put on it, our soul knows that we are connected, that we are aligned, that we have access to, because it is expressing in, through, and as each and every one of us all the time, which means it is expressing in, through each of us now. And so in this knowing and in this total alignment with what is, what was, and what is yet to be expressed, what is yet to be revealed, I'm knowing that it is in perfect harmony. That just like my belly button, I am connected and everyone here is connected. So moving forward into the day and into the week, I invite you all to bring this presence out to everyone who crosses your path, my path. To bring this love essence, this life essence into everything that we do. To be aware of our thoughts, of our words, and of our connection. And knowing that it's all one, it's all love, it's all life. I'm filled with gratitude. I feel blessed for being here today, for being in this moment, to be in this room, to be connected with all of you. I call it good. I call it all good. And I let it go, knowing that every desire and every intention that is set forth right now in this room by each and every one here is already revealing itself. And I remind you that I love you all and there's nothing you can do about it. And so it is.